single voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silenced, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence the small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone. Another eventful news day. Much to share. And something special to share at the end of this broadcast. So I hope you stick around for that. And this is going to be a direct tip of the hat, salute, tribute to two of my friends, to members of our Maverick family, Brian Howell and John Scotty Remby out in Alberta. It's a surprise, so you have to stick around until the end. It's something important. It is relevant to everyone. It's actually for everyone, but especially for those two tonight. I've been working on it for some time, but this is directly for them. A special message. So stick around for that. We'll get to it. Also, we'll talk about this partial ceasefire in Ukraine, this deal that's being cooked up. And we'll show you what the reality is on the ground there for people living in Ukraine, because Yarina, who was on our program the other night, she was kind enough to, and brave enough to send us some video to show us exactly what's going on over there, so that we don't have to just take someone's word for it or believe what Donald Trump says or what somebody else says or what Putin says or what anybody else says. She's going to show us what's happening over there this evening. She'll share with us the sound of peace. Also, politics heating up. Donald Trump doing this interview on Fox overnight, and this coming on the heels of Mark Carney, Canada's new Prime Minister, saying that for negotiations on trade and tariffs to begin, Donald Trump has to start to respect Canada and stop all this talk about the 51st state. So what does Donald Trump do? He rushes right over to Fox and starts talking about Canada becoming the 51st state again. He says some other things too. We're going to sort of dissect that a bit. And as I see tonight, we're having a little bit of internet trouble again. So hopefully that smooths out this evening. We'll do our best to bring you what we need to bring you. But we've had internet trouble again here over the past few days. So I hope it holds up for us this evening, because we have a lot of ground to cover, and again, something special to share at the end of this broadcast. So stick around till the end, and then you'll be in the know. You'll find out what it is. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
Yesterday, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin spoke on the phone. I think the call lasted for something like 2.5 hours. They discussed mostly, I guess, Ukraine, but also to some degree what's going on in the Middle East and something about the U.S.-Russia hockey tournament. Don't worry, folks. He'll get to peace as soon as he finishes talking about the hockey tournament. And today, Donald Trump took time to reach out to Volodymyr Zelensky, who says they had a very good telephone call, in his words. And this is their real first substantial conversation since that big dust-up in the Oval Office, where Zelensky was pretty much ambushed and ganged up on. But Zelensky described today's phone call as positive, very substantive, and frank, and he says he has signed up to a partial ceasefire that Trump agreed to with Vladimir Putin yesterday. And that really is an agreement, I guess, that has both sides saying they will not attack energy infrastructure. So Zelensky says that they've instructed their teams to resolve technical issues related to implementing and expanding the partial ceasefire, whatever that means. That's what he posted on social media. And he says much of the discussion was based on the call yesterday that Trump had with Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine. Or sorry, this is actually what Trump is saying. And he says they're very much on track toward peace, but I'm not so sure that that's really the case. It seems sort of like Trump gets a PR win of some kind here. Maybe something Putin threw Trump a bone. It's not really like a ceasefire. Let's go to the White House. We'll go to the press conference today with Caroline Leavitt, and she addresses this right off the top here.
Forgotten man and woman. On another important matter, yesterday, President Trump and President Putin spoke about the need for peace and a ceasefire in the Ukraine war. Both leaders agreed this conflict needs to end with a lasting peace, and also stressed the need for improved bilateral relations between the United States and Russia. President Trump also spoke with President Zelensky this morning to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their needs and requests. As President Trump has said repeatedly, the precious lives and money that both Ukraine and Russia have been spending in this war would be better spent on the needs of their people. This terrible conflict would have never started with President Trump in charge, but he's determined to end it once and for all. President Trump also promised maximum transparency and a commitment to rebuild the trust of the American people in our intelligence community. Part of that promise was to fully release previously classified records related to the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy, and he made that happen yesterday. This historic release consisted of approximately 80,000 pages of previously classified records that are now published. The records are available to access either online at archives.gov/JFK or in person, accessible to the American people at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. Records that are currently only available for in-person viewing are being digitized and will be uploaded in the coming days. On another note, positive economic data continues to pour in, showing the immediate impact of President Trump's pro-growth agenda. After suffering a steep decline in the final year of the Biden administration, the manufacturing sector came roaring back in February. Industrial production surged in February. These are new numbers, 3 times at a greater 3 times rate than the expectations to its highest ever recorded level. And President Trump's laser focus on massive deregulation and unleashing our domestic energy industry is leading to stabilities for Americans' bottom lines. As Newsweek summed it up today, gas prices are plummeting under President Trump. And the Trump administration continues to make American communities safer through our ongoing mass deportation campaign of illegal alien criminals. Yesterday, FBI Director Kash Patel announced the agency captured another fugitive from its 10 most wanted list, securing the extradition of Francisco Javier Roman Bardeles, a key senior leader of the brutal MS-13 gang. And the brave men and women of ICE also arrested a number of dangerous aliens across the country in recent days. You will see them on this screen. ICE San Francisco just arrested a citizen of Guatemala convicted of sexual battery. ICE New Orleans arrested a citizen of Ecuador convicted of rape in Suffolk County, New York. ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of Mexico convicted of assault by strangulation. ICE Dallas arrested a citizen of Mexico convicted of assault with a firearm and rape with a foreign object. And ICE Houston arrested a citizen of Guatemala convicted of indecent sexual contact with a child in Texas. These are heinous criminal alien monsters who the previous administration allowed to flood into our country. And every time President Trump and this team deport one of them, our country becomes safer. Finally, before I open it up to questions, I want to tout how successful our efforts have been in filling out President Trump's administration. There have been a record number of 281 Senate confirmed nominations already, with another 280 in process. Here at the White House, OPM and GSA, we have filled 100% of the total number of slots. And this is a record number of placements in the first 58 days of any administration, and a testament to the caliber and the sheer quantity of talented people who want to work for President Trump to make America great again. Here in our new media seat today, we have Katie Pavlich. Katie is the editor of townhall.com, which is a subsidiary of Town Hall Media. It's a leading conservative news and opinion outlet based right here in Washington, D.C., with writers and journalists reporting around the country. Last year, Town Hall Media had 60 million unique users and 1.4 billion page views, with a broad reach on a number of social media platforms. With that, Katie, please kick us off.
Thank you, Caroline. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. So given the back and forth with this U.S. District Judge and the administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act, does the president plan to send new and additional flights of Venezuelan gang members, now designated as foreign terrorists, from the U.S. to El Salvador or elsewhere? Can Americans expect to see those flights sometime soon?
Americans can absolutely expect to see the continuation of the mass deportation campaign that has been successfully led by this president, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and also our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Since you brought up the judges, I would like to point out that the judges in this country are acting erroneously. We have judges who are acting as partisan activists from the bench. They are trying to dictate policy from the President of the United States. They are trying to clearly slow walk this administration's agenda, and it's unacceptable. As the President said last night, we will continue to comply with these court orders. We will continue to fight these battles in courts, but it's incredibly apparent that there is a concerted effort by the far left to judge shop, to pick judges who are clearly acting as partisan activists from the bench in an attempt to derail this president's agenda. We will not allow that to happen. And not only are they usurping the will of the president and the chief executive of our country, but they are undermining the will of the American public, tens of millions of Americans who duly elected this president to implement the policies that are coming out of this White House.
And then one more question. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said yesterday that he was united with Democrats in working against Americans who, quote, their attitude is, I made my money all by myself, how dare your government take my money from me? Or, I built my company with my bare hands, how dare your government tell me how to treat my customers? What is the president's response to this, given his upcoming tax agenda and need to work on Capitol Hill?
Well, we certainly hope that Democrats all of a sudden are for more money in the pockets of the American public. The president has made it incredibly clear that he is committed to tax cuts. He is committed to passing a big reconciliation package later this year, ending no taxes on tips, taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security for our hardworking seniors. And we encourage everybody on Capitol Hill to support that when it comes to the finish line, especially Democrats who clearly need a boost from the American public right now. Their approvals are at an all-time record low. Thanks for being with us, Katie. Garrett.
I have one other question, but I want to follow up on Katie's question. Actually, you said the mass deportation campaign would continue, but she asked about the flights specifically. Will those flights to El Salvador continue while this case is being appealed?
We don't have any flights planned specifically, but we will continue with the mass deportations. And I would just like to point out that the judge in this case is essentially trying to say that the president doesn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our American soil. That is an egregious abuse of the bench. This judge does not have that authority. It is the opinion of this White House and of this administration, and that's why we're fighting this in court. And it's very, very clear that this is an activist judge who is trying to usurp the president's authority. Under the Alien Enemies Act, the president has this power, and that's why this deportation campaign has continued. And this judge, Judge Boasberg, is a Democrat activist. He was appointed by Barack Obama. His wife has donated more than $10,000 to Democrats, and he has consistently shown his disdain for this president and his policies, and it's unacceptable.
You took me right where I wanted to go about the idea that these people are all foreign terrorists, but Judge Boasberg was originally appointed by George W. Bush and then elevated by Barack Obama. I just feel like I should clear that up.
Well, let me just say something to that effect, Garrett. 67% of all of the injunctions in this century have come against which president? Donald J. Trump. Let me say that again. 60% of the injunctions by partisan activists in the judicial branch have come against President Donald Trump, and 92% of those have been from Democrat-appointed judges. This is a clear, concerted effort by leftists who don't like this president and are trying to impose or slow down his agenda.
So, given that, do you think it's a good use of Congress's time and the president's political capital to try to impeach and remove a federal judge, which would take 67 votes you're unlikely to get in the Senate?
Well, look, the president has made it clear that he believes this judge in this case should be impeached, and he has also made it clear that he has great respect for the Chief Justice John Roberts, and it's incumbent upon the Supreme Court to rein in these activist judges. These partisan activists are undermining the judicial branch by doing so. We have co-equal branches of government for a reason, and the president feels very strongly about that. Jackie.
Thanks, Carol. What options does the president have to, he says he's going to follow court orders. He wouldn't defy a court order, but he's raised these concerns about these judges acting in such a partisan way. What option does he have to ensure that his agenda continues to move forward while this is ongoing and the judges appear to be trying to just block and delay and impede?
Well, you're right. They are trying to block, delay, and impede. This is lawfare. The president is no stranger to it. He faced it in his campaign, and this is a continuation of the lawfare that President Trump faced as a candidate, and he's now unfortunately facing as a president. Clearly, these partisan activists in the judicial branch didn't get the memo on November 5th when the American people overwhelmingly re-elected this president to continue with mass deportations. So White House counsel and the Department of Justice are working on this. They're appealing these cases, and we will continue to use the full weight of the White House counsel's office and the president's team of lawyers to fight this in court, because we know we will win even if we have to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Okay, that's enough of that for now. Where should we take this from here? So let's swing back over to the whole ceasefire in Ukraine issue, because we have to come back to that, because I need to go through what Trump was saying in this interview on Fox overnight too, and what's actually going on the ground over there. So based on what we know right now, a partial ceasefire agreement has been proposed and partially accepted in the context of this ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. This partial ceasefire involves a mutual halt on strikes targeting energy infrastructure by both Russia and Ukraine. It's much more limited than the broad ceasefire that was originally proposed. It's a 30-day ceasefire initially. The agreed pause on energy infrastructure attacks is set to last for 30 days, as I said, but it could potentially be extended. We'll see. This all is because of this phone call that started yesterday. Now you have this phone call with Zelensky today. The U.S. and Ukraine had previously held talks and agreed to a 30-day broader ceasefire, but that's not what Russia agreed to. In fact, they haven't really agreed to any of that except this now revised proposal, which involves just shutting down attacks on infrastructure, energy infrastructure. And Ukraine has been very successful in taking out oil depots, oil refineries inside Russia. I think they've reduced Russia's oil production capacity by about 25%. That's pretty serious, because that is what is fueling, literally, the Russian economy and their war machine. So when does all this take effect? Well, I think it's supposed to be in effect even now, because this phone call suggests that this halt on energy infrastructure strikes could take effect immediately if both sides adhere to it, but I'm going to show you that hasn't happened. There's no precise start time on this. This is not really a very robust ceasefire agreement, and from what I'm seeing, it doesn't even seem to have a clear-cut start time, no demarcation for an exact start time. So as of right now, the partial ceasefire on energy targets represents the first mutually agreed suspension of specific attacks in more than 3 years since the full-scale Russian invasion took place. Not talking about the aggression before that, but it's not a comprehensive ceasefire by any stretch. And Russia's continued attacks overnight, even after the phone call between Trump and Putin, casts doubt on whether this thing has even been implemented at all. This whole situation certainly remains fluid. And Yarina, the young lady who was on our program the other night, she lives right near the front lines up in the eastern part of Ukraine, moved up there to be close to her boyfriend. And she sent me a couple of videos today to show us what it's really like to live there right now. This is the sound of peace. This is the Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin revised ceasefire that Zelensky has agreed to, but this is what Russia is up to today, after this ceasefire agreement was supposed to go into effect without any exact timeline for taking effect. Just immediately, maybe sometime, maybe tomorrow, I guess whenever Russia feels like it. But this is what Yarina is dealing with there right now, today. So I don't know what was being targeted. It's just missiles, rockets striking in the area where she lives, and of course it's so close that she can feel the explosions, and they're very, very close. And that's what it's like to live there right now. Not only is there no real ceasefire, it's how would you describe that? A strategic ceasefire that somebody seems to feel they're going to get some strategic advantage out of. That's all that is. It's not real. It certainly doesn't help soldiers on either side. It doesn't stop the killing. It doesn't do anything to help civilians who are just trying to live their lives. This is not peace. That doesn't sound anything like peace. In the Middle East, well, here, let me show you this too. After Donald Trump's great peace initiative with Vladimir Putin, this is what is going on in Ukraine. Here's a graphic showing massive drone attacks inside Ukraine since this agreement on a ceasefire was reached. All those lines. Some are confirmed hits, unconfirmed hits. Some of these indicate damage. The red lines are where you have destruction and fires. Power outages are the purple lines, which indicates that energy infrastructure is still being targeted. And these are mostly coming in from Shahed UAV devices, Shahed drones. And I'm not sure exactly how many are involved in this, but this is, it just shows you that this is not over. This is hardly a ceasefire. This is window dressing. This is politics. And this is people's lives. And it isn't just in Ukraine, it's also in the Middle East, where Donald Trump, if you recall, as he was coming into office, he said, Hamas better release all those hostages by Saturday, or there will be hell to pay. Guess what? Not all the hostages have been released. And tonight, this didn't start tonight, but it's continuing tonight. And there's this new ground operation in Gaza. Here, let me show you the headline here. All media outlets picking this up. It says here, this is NBC. Israel's military sent ground troops back into the Gaza Strip Wednesday. It broke a 2-month ceasefire with a sprawling bombing campaign. Hundreds were killed. Targeted ground operation is focused on the central and southern Gaza Strip over the past 24 hours. Ground troops had also retaken about half of the Netzarim corridor, according to the IDF. Does this look like peace to you? Trump said it would be so easy. He would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Now he's going to own Gaza and build a resort. And I'm not sure what the heck is going on in Ukraine. He is saying tonight that these reports of Vladimir Putin demanding that the United States suspend all military intelligence and military aid, and all Western countries suspend military aid to Ukraine in order to get a ceasefire and longer-term peace deal. Trump is saying that is being rejected, so there is that. But the whole world has been turned upside down because of this, and this is not peace. This is not even close to peace. Nor is this a win for Donald Trump. But the media not paying a lot of attention to what is going on in Ukraine. So he has achieved a sort of a public relations win in that regard. Like, he scored a point, I guess, because it's deflected media attention, I think, away from Ukraine to some degree. But last night, he not only addressed Ukraine, he also came back to this whole question of Canada as the 51st state in this crazy interview with Laura Ingraham on Fox News. Let me just bring this up for you. Okay, well, I want to dissect some of this interview with Laura Ingraham. But so let me take a little break. We're going to come back on the other side. Then we're going to go through this. And this is like riveting stuff. This was going on while we were on the air last night, and I wasn't aware. I found out right after we ended our program, and it floored me. Some of the things that were said and the way he was saying them. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, let's play some of this and we'll stop it and start it. And I'm just going to go over this with you.
His conversation with Vladimir Putin. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We got a readout of your call with Vladimir Putin, and it was a fairly optimistic take. Vladimir Putin agreed to a ceasefire immediately on energy and infrastructure,
right,
but not to a 30-day ceasefire. Tell us what happened.
Well, you have a situation where you have a lot of guns pointing at each other foolishly, because it would have never happened if I were president. That was not a war that was supposed to happen.
Keep saying
and it did happen. So that's where we are. And right.
In fact, the war was on while he was in office. It was actually ongoing. It started like 11 years ago. And so there was a conflict going on there while he was in office. He never stopped it.
Now, you have a lot of guns pointing at each other, and a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough. Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,000.
Yeah, now it's tough to do a ceasefire. He said it would not be tough. He said it was going to be quite simple, not complicated, and he'd have it all done in 24 hours. And he just said about a week ago that it shouldn't be that hard. Now he's saying it's complicated and dead hard.
Without going a little bit further would have been tough. Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,500 soldiers. They are nicely encircled, and that's not good. And
nicely encircled? Weird choice of words. Why would you even describe it that way? Then he has to come back and say not good, but nicely encircled? So what's in this guy's head? And secondly, the intelligence that we're getting back indicates that is not even true. That is something that we talked about this a couple of times over the past 2 nights. It's just simply not true. It's a Russian talking point, and Zelensky has indicated that his troops are not encircled. Yes, they have been pushed back, they've lost ground, but they're not encircled, they're not entrapped over there, and you still have the Ukrainian forces who have moved back and have dug in, and they have fortified their positions in new locations. Not to say that they haven't lost ground, they have, but they are not encircled. It is not as serious as he is saying, although they did lose some soldiers. Nevertheless, it's just not accurate.
We want to get it over with. Look, we're doing this. There are no Americans involved. There could be if you end up in World War III over this, which is so ridiculous. But, you know, strange things happen. And I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things and toward getting it to peace. And we talked about other things also.
Was there non-negotiables mentioned by Putin? It was reported that I think the Kremlin media actually stated that he demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine in order to get to this multi-step deal.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid. Actually, we didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about.
Putin says they did. Russian officials say they did. That's been reported in Russian state media, and so he's contradicting what's being said on the other side.
A lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
In the readout, it also stated that both sides want to get to an improved bilateral relationship, the United States and Russia.
That's true.
How can we trust that Vladimir Putin actually wants that, in that he's not also being influenced at the same time by his close friend, President Xi of China?
Well, look, we have our own discussions with President Xi of China, and he wants to get along also, and he's looking to get along, and we're looking to get along with him, and we will. We have a problem of trade where we have a very big imbalance with China. With Russia, we don't have that much trade, and they'd like to, and we'd like to also. They have some very valuable things for us, including very big forms of rare earth. They have a lot of earth. You know, they have a big chunk of real estate, the biggest in the world for a country, by far. And on that, they have things that we could use, frankly, and that other people could use.
What is it with this guy? He says Russia has things that the United States could use. He wants to do more trade with Russia, which is not close to the United States. Canada is attached geographically to the United States. We are his neighbor. We have the second largest land mass of any nation state on Earth. And we have an abundance of rare earth minerals, but he keeps saying that the United States doesn't need anything we have. They don't, he says, the U.S. doesn't need our lumber. They don't need Canadian rare earth minerals. They don't need anything we have. They don't need automobiles. They don't need, I guess, nickel. They don't need uranium. They don't need any of our energy. They don't need our electricity, he says. They don't need anything that we have, but they need what Russia has. Now, can you please try to make sense of that for me? Because it just defies logic. We've had this incredible trading relationship. Our economies are very much integrated already, mutually beneficial. And he says that he's gone to war with us, well, and says he wants to do more business with Russia. This is stupid.
I think that President Xi would like to get along, and I think Russia wants to get along with the United States. I also think we're a much different country than we were just a few months.
And he's talking nice about China as well, a country that he's been rattling the saber with. And tonight we're seeing that the Canadian government has condemned the Chinese government because it's been revealed that they recently executed a number of Canadians, apparently because they were charged with drug offenses. And of course, Canada is opposed to the death penalty, the Canadian government, wherever it happens. And now Canadian citizens have been executed inside China, which is further straining our trading relationship on the Canadian side with China. Meanwhile, Trump seems to be cozying up to China, Russia, and going to war with Canada.
Months ago, we're a country that's now respected. We were not respected. We were being laughed at. We had incompetent leadership. This was a war, as an example, that would have never happened if I were president.
Is part of your desire to forge this new relationship with Russia also impacted by Russia's closer relationship since you left office in 2021 with China? Because I think you talked about before the desire to box out China from that part of the world and have a closer relationship with Russia.
So as a student of history, which I am, and I've watched it all, the first thing you learn is you don't want Russia and China to get together. With that being said, no, it's not a big part of it, but maybe that'll happen or maybe it won't. Obama really forced them together through energy and bad energy policies. And what he did, so many different things. He forced a marriage which would never have taken place. It was not a natural. And for one reason, Russia has tremendous land, a lot of land, and China doesn't have enough land. Russia has a much smaller population than China. And it's sort of it was always a natural enemy situation. They're probably friendly now, but we're going to be friendly with both. I think we're going to be friendly with both. China needs us in terms of trade very badly, but we have to straighten out the deficit. We have now more than $1 trillion deficit with China. It's not even believable. And we're going to be doing something about that. And with Russia, they would like to have some of our economic power.
The criticism that you've heard since really 2015 is that you have more in common with Vladimir Putin than you do with globalist leaders, maybe some NATO leaders.
I just want to comment, too, about this whole thing with China. You know, we'll come back to this. I've been hearing criticism directed at our own government because China has imposed a 100% tariff on canola. And so that's being spun up, especially with people who are connecting that to what's going on with Alberta, saying that this is just another example of the federal government throwing Alberta under the bus because they are protecting big foreign car corporations with tariffs against Chinese EVs which they knew would result in China retaliating, and now we have a 100% tariff on canola, and the federal government's not doing anything about that. And so Alberta's going to just pay the price for the rest of the country. But it's not an accurate way to look at it. Not at all. First of all, these tariffs are just coming on. Secondly, the Canadian government has not provided a full response to this yet. Third, the 100% tariff on the EV vehicles out of China was levied in conjunction and with the United States to harmonize our trade practices with the United States. And that particular tariff could be honestly justified because of the trade practices that China is engaging in with regard to electric vehicles. Because what they're doing is heavily subsidizing electric vehicle production in China with massive subsidies in order to bring the purchase price, the prices of electric vehicles coming out of Chinese factories, which are being produced in massive quantities with government subsidies, so that they can flood the market and dump these things into other countries with the short-term goal of basically selling these things well below the actual cost of production in order to dominate markets around the world with the intent of putting competitors out of business with product that is being dumped below market value into their markets, which is what was going to be happening here in the United States and Canada. Cars that would sell for maybe $10,000, not because it costs that much to produce them, because it costs more than that, but the Chinese government subsidizes them so much that it basically cuts the cost like in half. And because after they dominate the market and they put their competitors out of business, then they jack their prices up. That's the objective behind doing that. In order to allow the retooling of factories here and the electrification of the auto industry here, and in order to allow our industry to adapt and change to electric vehicle production in harmony with what the United States was doing and other countries, other Western countries. We also were using some subsidies and some, and I was never in favor of it, frankly. But billions of dollars was invested into plants here to retool them for the electrification of the auto industry. But in order to make sure that those plants had a fighting chance to get off the ground and get kick-started with the new EV production, it just wouldn't work if you allowed a foreign competitor to just dump product into your market, as you have this basically fledgling industry, a rebooted auto industry trying to get back up on its feet. So they had to level the playing field and equalize the pricing, at least over the short term. That's what the tariffs were about. Now, it wasn't entirely Canada's decision. It was something that was done to harmonize, to align the exact same trade practices with the United States. What they did, we did. We did it in conjunction with, because the auto industry has always, from the very beginning, been integrated between the United States and Canada, and Mexico now as well. So we were working with the United States. So what happened with those tariffs was not just a Canadian decision. You can be looking straight at the White House for that. Now, that was the Biden administration, but those tariffs were also put on because why? Because Trump, when he was running for re-election, was pushing for tariffs against China on EVs, which the Biden administration reacted to and probably would have implemented anyway, but they did it in direct response to what Trump was saying about using tariffs against Chinese EVs. now Trump is attacking Canada with the very same type of trade war that he was unleashing, the Biden administration unleashed on China. Only it's not. It's actually worse on Canada because those are targeted tariffs on China at one specific industry. The U.S. under Trump was 25% on everything that's leaving the country, which is insane. It's not like just this one product. It's not because this, they're saying that you're dumping this commodity, whatever it might be, aluminum or steel, you're dumping it into our market, so we're going to impose a 100% tariff just on that. No, this is on everything we produce. And so there was no way that Canada could predict what China might do in retaliation. No doubt they were anticipating that something would come from China as a result of this, probably. This is an extremely bold move on canola, and that's because Canada exports so much canola to China. And China, it's going to have a dramatic impact on their economy too, because I think over 90% of all the canola that they were bringing into the country came from Canada. Now they're going to be sourcing it probably from other sources because the government just made it cost prohibitive to bring canola in. But these things, I think, will be dealt with in time. But it seems like there's almost a coordinated effort here in some strange way between the United States and China to target Canada. And something will happen in order to alleviate the pressures from this. It has to. There has to be a relief valve, turned open on this whole thing with the canola. So, don't think that this is the final chapter, the final word on this. It isn't. There will be new developments on this front, I am sure. But make no mistake, this is actually Canada being caught in the middle. It's not because Canada targeted China unilaterally with this and then got this result out in Alberta with the canola, and it also affects, I think, Saskatchewan pretty heavily, maybe Ontario a bit as well. But it's not that simple. And it certainly was not a conscious, focused effort to, transfer the burden of protecting Ontario's auto sector onto Alberta. There was no intent there. Not that I'm seeing anyway. You get me a memo where they're talking about that, or, something to solidify that accusation, and I'm all ears and all eyes. I'll read it and listen, but I don't think that that's the case at all. Just, it's an important observation because that needs clarity, especially right now because emotions are running so high, especially out west, where some people are just looking for any excuse to gin up more division within the country. And it isn't accurate, it isn't fair, nor is it helpful or constructive in any way to do that at a time when we really need to be finding ways to work together to solve these problems and find a way to get this whole trade war to end. Not destroy the U.S. economy, but bring an end to the tariffs, this insane economic attack on our country. And make no mistake, this is economic warfare. This is a form of war on our country, which is just absolutely insane. We're right here. We've always been a reliable partner with the United States for all of these resources. We're right here. And Trump is saying, no, we don't need anything you have. He'd rather go to Russia. Let that sink in for a moment and then think about is that really the kind of country you would want to belong to with this guy at the helm? And that's the way that he's treating us right now. Do you think he's going to treat you well when he takes you over by using economic force? Does he show you any respect now? What makes you think he's going to have any respect for you at all if he annexes you? That's not respectful. That's not a request. That's using a form of coercion, force. Let's go back to the interview.
And in this case, with Zelensky. You're both nationalists. Zelensky's more of a globalist. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I am a nationalist, but I'm a nationalist for the United States, not for anybody else. And it's interesting because there's nobody been tougher on Russia than me. I'm the one that pointed out Nord Stream 2, and I stopped it. Nord Stream is the biggest pipeline, I guess, in the world, taking care of all of Europe. And it was being built from before I got there. And somehow they were on the way. It was going to be, and I stopped it. It was just stone cold dead. I stopped it in its tracks. That's not somebody that's being particularly nice. It was the biggest project they ever had. I had it stopped. When Biden got in, he immediately approved it, like immediately. One of the first things he did in office was he approved Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2 until I was president. I said, what are you doing? You mean you're building a pipeline to Germany and various places in Europe. You're paying them billions of dollars a month, and then we're paying a lot of money to fight them. This is not going to work out well. And it stopped, and then Biden approved it, which was a really stupid thing to do, but he did it. And Putin actually said to me, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as my enemy. He said that very strongly. But with all of that, I had a very good relationship with Putin. I had a very good relationship with President Xi, a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Lots of good relationships.
Yeah, he gets along with all the tough guys, or so he says. Gets along, but all the traditional allies of the United States, he's at odds with. All of them. Everybody. All the countries in Europe and Canada. This is nuts.
And that's a positive thing. That's not a negative thing. But at the same time, I'm about our country. So that's why we're talking about tariffs. We'll be taking in trillions of dollars.
I want to get to the tariffs in a minute because we're going to first hit the other big news of the day, which was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court issued what a rare statement about your suggestion on Truth that you posted earlier today that Judge James Boasberg should be impeached after he ordered those deportation flights to El Salvador halted, essentially.
We've dealt with this, so let's just zip past it. Just one moment. In fact, let's take a little break, and I'm going to queue up the whole portion with Canada, and we'll deal directly with that. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm more or less back into the interview, close to where we need to be.
1,000 pounds like this, they have to get better. It's going to be a little bit tough for them. It's not easy. You know, they're up to a long time. And when they do, they'll come to the Oval Office.
Now more of my interview with President Trump. They have a $60 billion trade deficit. China has like a $300 billion last year. You said it goes up to, when you add it all up, it's $1 trillion.
Way over 100, Canada. And here's my problem with Canada. Canada was meant to be the 51st state because we subsidize Canada by $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars.
It is a lie. Subsidies to Canada amount to zero. No subsidies. Now, if you look at the trade deficit, it's about $40 billion a year, and that's mostly because of energy and because we're a smaller country than the United States. You take energy out of the equation, oil, natural gas, electricity, and Canada actually purchases more from the United States than we export. That's the truth. That is absolutely inaccurate, an absolute falsehood. Let's just back it up a little bit. And here we go again. He wants everything that Russia has to offer, but not so from Canada, which is absolutely nuts.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We have a lot of lumber. We freed it up, as you know, last week. We're freeing it up so that you can actually cut down a tree without being, given the death penalty. Because what these radical environmentalists have done to our country, but we freed it up. But we don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We certainly don't want their automobiles. They make a lot of millions of automobiles.
Why, if he doesn't need the electricity, why did he have a little hissy fit temper tantrum when Doug Ford said that he was going to slap a 25% export tax on electricity going to the United States? And then Trump retaliates because Canada takes a defensive posture on this trade war, and suddenly the electricity that he says that the U.S. doesn't need, suddenly they need it. And he says that, he talked about how it was, I don't remember his exact words, but he essentially kind of painted that as an aggressive act, or maybe even an act of war against the United States to increase the price of electricity. We're not under any obligation to sell anything to anybody under these conditions. It's not like we were crossing the border and taking out electrical energy infrastructure. It wasn't even like he was turning it right off. He was just implementing a 25% tariff on energy exports, 25% to 25%, 25% on everything in Canada going to the United States. So he announced a 25% tariff on electricity. Trump then freaks out. But he didn't even need it. You don't need it.
Sent in. Right. I'd rather have them made in Michigan. I'd rather have them made in South Carolina or any one of our.
You're tougher with Canada than you are with some of our biggest adversaries.
Only because it's meant to be our 51st state. And
okay, but
but listen to this for a second.
We need their territory. They have territorial advantage. We're not going to let them get close to China.
Look,
right?
I deal with every country, indirectly or directly. One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people now this was Trudeau, the people that good old Justin, I call him Governor Trudeau.
Yeah, very disrespectful.
His people were nasty.
Nasty.
And they weren't telling the truth. They never told the truth. They
never tell the truth. There's one guy who might be accused of that, and he's on the screen right now. And he's littered this interview with falsehoods from beginning to end. And these numbers that he's throwing around, I've confirmed them. The numbers that I'm sharing with you are confirmed, researched, in detail. The numbers he's throwing around are inflated exaggerations. Unbelievable.
They'd say, well, we don't charge. Well, they do. They charge tremendous. And if you look at dairy products, what they've done to our farmers,
we charge tremendous on automobiles. We have always had a mutually beneficial auto industry with a trade agreement in place. First, it was the Auto Pact, then the North American Free Trade Agreement, negotiated content rules, essentially. And those auto parts, the cars, they're pretty much traveling back and forth across the border tariff-free, or at least they were, until this guy comes along and upsets the whole apple cart. Supply chains integrated, the entire industry humming along right from the very beginning of the auto industry, with the emergence of the Model T and Henry Ford's first assembly lines. and production facilities both in Windsor and Detroit. And from there, the entire industry blossomed, and it was created, built over time together. He doesn't seem to understand that. He thinks that we stole the industry. We didn't steal it. We helped you build it. And you helped us build it. We built it together.
I'd go up to Iowa. I'd go up to different places, Nebraska, and they would always complain about Canada, how they get ripped off. Do you know that Canada has a 250% tariff? 250. Nobody knows that. They charge us numbers that are crazy.
But
we have a very big deficit.
Yeah, but we don't dump our product. He's talking about milk and dairy, but we do not dump the product into the U.S. market. It's a carved out portion of our food supply chain in order to ensure food sovereignty, national security, essentially, to make sure that our farmers can continue to exist, to survive. And we have a supply management system in place that has been here, I think, for as long as I've been alive. And yeah, it's a 250 or 270% tariff, but that's because we're basically isolating that little industry, not a little industry, it's a big industry, but it's isolated. But it's not aggressive to the United States. We don't dump milk into the U.S. In fact, we dump it down the drain so we don't push the price of milk down and affect their industry in a negative way. They get to do what they're going to do over there, and we're basically doing what we want to do over here. And I think that in total, there was about $400 million worth of dairy that was shipped to the United States last year. That's about average, and that amounts to, I think, 1% of all the milk that is imported into the United States. So again, this assertion that Canada is ripping off the United States and that their dairy farmers are under some kind of assault, it's not true. The only thing that's going on is we're not providing full access to the Canadian market to U.S. big corporate industrial dairy operations, allowing them to flood our market with milk, which would then put our smaller farmers potentially out of business, and forcing them to compete by setting up similar massive industrial operations where you're pumping the cows full of growth hormones and drugs to make them produce more milk, which is something that we're not really doing in the way that they do it in the United States. Because people up here are also concerned about the quality of milk and the way that it's produced. It's a more complicated issue than he's laying it out for people here on this interview. He's not giving you the full picture, and half a truth is sometimes the equivalent of a lie.
With Canada, and there's no reason, much more, we have much more. Just so you understand, we subsidize Canada, and I like Canada. I love Canada. I love Wayne Gretzky.
The Liberal guy.
10 seconds ago, you were saying that we're nasty.
I love his wife.
The Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down and out. Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for
conservative.
China, closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So your end game is what with them?
My end game is I don't want to have a big deficit. I don't want to see the United States of America, and you say 60 and I say 200, but it doesn't matter. I don't want us to pay 60 or 200 billion dollars to a country that if they were a state, think of this, it would be our biggest, most beautiful, it would be.
See, even Ingram is right there saying that the trade deficit is 60 billion. I'm saying 40. It depends on the year. It averages out to about 40 to 45 billion a year is the information that I have. Now she's saying 60. I'll even give you that, 60, but that's a far cry from 200. And sometimes he said as much as 300 or 350 billion, which is an absolute lie. There's a big difference between 60 and 200 billion dollars. But he doesn't want any trade deficit. And again, It's not that simple because energy plays a big part of this. Energy that he says they don't need, but they do.
Great. This state, it would be cherished. We'd take care of it. The people would pay half what they're paying right now. Canada pays very little for defense. They think we're going to defend
We protect them.
What?
We protect them.
We protect them. We protect them. Do you know in NATO they pay less than anybody else? In everything else, they go, we're in the process of buying 48 icebreakers. All of a sudden I see Canada's involved where they're going to get a piece of them. I say, what are they paying? So I got tired of it. Here's the story. I had one of the most successful economies. I had the most successful economy in the history of our country in my first 4 years. We did a great job. Largest tax cuts ever, largest everything. We had right to try where people were able to use drugs. Stupidly, for many years, they weren't able to use, the far-reaching drugs because they weren't approved yet. Somebody's term.
And of course, okay, so he's on to all this other stuff. And just coming back, like, he's not making these comments about he'd rather deal with a liberal lightly. This, I think, was premeditated. And we're living in an upside-down Trump world right now. He's lying about that, too. He clearly doesn't like Justin Trudeau. He clearly doesn't like the liberals. He's got a hate on for liberalism in general. He's gone to war with liberalism. So has Vladimir Putin, for that matter. This is a war on liberalism. And I mean, not just big L liberal party brand liberalism. I'm talking about classical liberalism because he no longer advocates for that. He doesn't believe in it. He's a populist, he's become an authoritarian. And he doesn't like Canada's liberal government. And he would clearly prefer to have a conservative government in power. The question is it because he'd rather deal with them or because he would be controlling them? And it's hard to know what the heck is going on because there is clearly U.S. influence in our political process up here right now. I've laid that out for you over the past month in various ways, not the least of which is showing what was going on a couple of years ago. I won't get into it tonight. For those of you who are regular watchers, you know what I'm talking about. And that's a major concern, an international incident, frankly. But it's so crazy, people are still not paying very close attention to it because it's cloaked in craziness. Dismissed by people as crazy when it isn't, because it's actually happening. There's a lot of weird, crazy stuff going on right now, and it flows directly from the White House. This is crazy talk. 51st state, bringing it back up again. And make no mistake, he's talking like this right now on this interview in the past 24 hours because Canada's new Prime Minister has said, we'll get to trade negotiations when you start speaking to us with respect. And then he said that he respects Donald Trump, chose his words carefully. We respect you. He's looking for respect back. That's not too much to ask, in my estimation. Is it? To just be treated with respect? But Trump can't do that. He's got to run over to do an interview on Fox News and insult the country again. Insult Justin Trudeau by again calling him the governor. Not really mentioning the new prime minister so much by name. And then insulting Pierre Poilievre. Although I think it's kind of like what Putin did when Trump was running for re-election and he was asked, who would you rather see in the White House? And then one day he's saying that he'd rather have Biden reelected. When it was pretty clear that he'd rather have Trump. And Trump's paying off for him, isn't he? Europe in a state of chaos over Trump and his realignment geopolitically. Now Canada also, you saw in that news conference with Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, yesterday, going off to the Arctic and talking about the over-the-horizon surveillance system, which they're purchasing not from the United States, Australia. Talking about our sovereignty. because he said right in his address yesterday in that news conference that Canada is looking to improve relations with its already reliable partners. And in the same breath mentioned that the United States seems to be going through, and I'm paraphrasing, but the United States is going through some sort of a realignment geopolitically. Yeah, foreign policy under the Trump administration aligns pretty much perfectly with what Russia's foreign policies align with. They're he's flipped sides. He hasn't completely abandoned Ukraine, but you can see that he's in many ways throwing Ukraine under the bus, even with this ceasefire or partial ceasefire. Was that video from Yarina? Did that look like a ceasefire of any kind to you? Did that graph look like a ceasefire? No. Maybe they'll stop targeting infrastructure, but if this ceasefire lasts 30 days, a ceasefire that hasn't even kicked in yet, even though I think it was supposed to, but it's not really clear, what kind of a deal is that? It looks to me like it's a ceasefire, a deal put together by the world's greatest deal maker that isn't worth the paper that it might not even have been written on. Like, where is this agreement? Where can I see it? I'd like to see the signed document for this 30-day ceasefire deal. Art of the deal? With peace like this, we sure as hell don't need war. All talk, no real action.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Zelensky, in his phone call with Trump today, I guess was talking about inviting Trump to go to Ukraine to see what the reality is on the ground. I don't know if he'll do it or not, but I hope he does, because I think that he would be well served to see firsthand what is really going on over in Ukraine. And maybe we can bring more of that reality to you through Yarina. I'm going to reach out to her to see if we can get her back on the program to talk again more about what the reality on the ground is over there in that part of Ukraine, where you saw today missile strikes, rockets still being fired into the area where she lives. And there's no substitute for talking to people who are right there living through it. And it will give us all a deeper understanding of the realities of war, regardless of where you stand on whether you think the war is justified, unjustified, who started it, who's to blame, blah, blah, blah. The reality is civilians, people living during this war, living through this war, have a lot of challenges day to day, just trying to survive. So I'm going to reach out to her and see if we can get her back on to dig in even a little bit deeper to find out what life is like living in that war zone. And this whole trade war thing with Canada, United States, Donald Trump, Pierre Poilievre reacting, saying that Trump's comments about preferring to deal with a liberal that shows why people should vote for him, not for Trudeau, because he'd be a tougher customer to deal with than Mark Carney, the new Liberal leader and current Prime Minister. And we keep hearing that there's probably going to be an election called soon, so Poilievre is out there on the campaign trail. Make no mistake, they're out there campaigning. They all are to some degree, but especially the Conservatives, they've been ramping up the campaign stuff for months. And he went off to Sudbury today, to an area where, again, I guess the United States doesn't need our nickel out of Sudbury. They don't need anything we have, right? That's why the astronauts actually, during the Apollo missions, went to Sudbury. Did you know that? They trained up in the Sudbury area because of the way the land is up there. It was very much like the moon, I guess, in some areas around the Big Nickel. And that's where Pierre Poilievre was today, talking about how he wants to unleash the minerals, the value, the wealth that is under the ground in what they call the Ring of Fire, where all these rare earth minerals that Donald Trump says they don't need, but that's where they all are in Canada. Donald Trump doesn't need them, though. Just remember that. He doesn't want them, doesn't care anything about them, doesn't want any of it, don't need it. I don't know why he doesn't just shut the border down right away and keep all us nasty Canadians out of his country. I don't know why he wants to annex us when we're just so darn nasty. Who else was nasty? Wasn't Hillary Clinton nasty? Wasn't she like a nasty woman? Well, I'm one nasty Canadian once you get me riled up. Next thing you know, I'm just going to have to make t-shirts or something with nasty written right on it. Nasty Canadians. Here's Poilievre today talking about the Ring of Fire. And I told you guys too. I told you so. Even if you elect Poilievre, it's still not going to satisfy Trump. I do believe that. I think he's telling you the truth, that he doesn't have any love for Pierre Poilievre either. Didn't like Trudeau, hated Trudeau, doesn't like Poilievre, doesn't like Carney. He doesn't like any of us nasty Canuckistanians.
Thank you very much, everyone. Great to be here in the Big Nickel to celebrate the incredible workers that build our country. Thank you very much to Gord, Jeff, Jamie, and most importantly, thanks to all you, the great workers who literally build our country, without whom I wouldn't have been able to drive here today. There are countless millions of people who rely on your important work that will never know that it was you that put the bridge under their vehicle or the concrete and cement in the walls of their apartment complex. You deserve a good life. You deserve the Canadian promise. Your hard work should get you a beautiful life in a wonderful house on a safe street, protected by our brave troops under a proud flag. That, after all, was the Canadian promise. But after 10 years of the Trudeau-Carney Liberals, housing costs have doubled, food is unaffordable, taxes punish work, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder reign in our once safe streets. And worst of all, we've lost $500 billion in investment to the Americans, making us more dependent after 10 years of Liberals on President Trump. Speaking of whom, yesterday the President said that having a Liberal Prime Minister would be easier for him to deal with, just as he threatened once again to make us the 51st state. And you know what? On that point, it's true. I'm a strong leader. I'm a tough guy to deal with. I'm firm in my convictions, and I'll always put Canada first. By contrast, in 10 years, the Liberals have blocked resource projects, hiked taxes, and driven $500 billion of investment to the U.S., all while Mark Carney moved his corporate headquarters out of Canada to New York, bringing jobs to the United States of America. Mark Carney will back down, and his Liberal policies will keep Canada weak, just like Trump wants. Giving the Liberals a fourth term will only weaken our country and strengthen Donald Trump. We need a strong, tough leader who will unleash our resources, cut taxes and red tape, build homes, and make our economy less reliant on the Americans to put Canada first. And that is why I'm here today. About 500 kilometers away from here, 500 kilometers away from Thunder Bay, in Canada's wonderful communities of the North, companies discovered one of the largest untapped areas for rare earth metals in the world.
That Trump doesn't need.
Buried just under their feet was tens of billions of dollars of chromite, cobalt, copper, nickel, gold, and countless other resources that the world is desperate for. It's called the Ring of Fire. They could make Canada very rich. It would be life-changing for Northern Ontario towns, galvanizing thousands of paychecks and modern infrastructure. It would help our First Nations become richer. It would boost our economy with billions of dollars, allowing us to become less dependent on the Americans after we start selling those resources overseas. And it would turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people. It would allow us to break our dependence on Beijing for batteries, turbines, solar panels, satellites. So you might be asking, we've known about this place for a long time. Why are there no shovels in the ground? Why are there no paychecks in workers' pockets? Well, the answer is the Liberals did everything they could to block this project. They have a keep it in the ground ideology. They have an anti-resource development policy in C-69. They've been sitting on the permits for 5 years. The process was started by former Liberal Environment Minister Jonathan Wilkinson in February of 2020, about the time when Mark Carney became Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. After he did nothing for 3 years, then Trudeau moved him out and put Stephen Guilbeault in. Guilbeault is a radical environmentalist who's still in cabinet, and he blocked the project. In fact, he came out and said he doesn't want us building any more roads in Canada because he doesn't like cars. So finally, 2 years after that, the Liberals completed their work by creating yet another 2.5-year process that would only lead to another report that won't even decide whether or not the project can go ahead. That report will cost Canadian taxpayers and industry and will get nothing done. This in spite of the fact that the Ontario government is doing exactly the same report. So we have more bureaucrats busy doing paperwork instead of miners digging for minerals. So, after a decade of Liberal keep-it-in-the-ground ideology, the Ring of Fire is on the brink of collapse, not to mention that Bill C-69, the Liberal no new pipelines and resource law, is still in place, making it impossible to get anything approved. A decade has gone by where Canada has had the worst economic growth of all our competitors. The American per capita GDP has grown 40 times faster than Canada's. Investment is leaving our country and making America stronger. The Liberal gatekeepers and red tape have devastated our country before Donald Trump's tariffs, and they are an existential threat after those tariffs. That's why I'm announcing today that my government will set a deadline of 6 months to green light permits for the Ring of Fire. We will unleash the production of chromite, cobalt, copper, nickel, platinum, and others. We will also commit $1 billion over 3 years to help the Ontario government build the highway to get there. I hope that highway will be built with your asphalt, with your concrete, and with your hard work. The supplies that you make here that are so often made in Sudbury will be absolutely necessary to build the infrastructure to get the minerals to market from the Great Ring of Fire. We will let companies investing in the Ring of Fire share some of their federal corporate tax with local First Nations to help lift them out of poverty. And many of those local First Nations are strong supporters of this project. I think of Chief Cornelius, of Webequie, of Chief Bruce, from Martin Falls. They have actually met with me and asked for this project to go ahead as soon as possible because they know it will make them richer and better off for the future. And because NATO has identified many of these critical minerals as necessary for our common security, we can count some of the expenditure on the road towards our NATO 2% target for defense. We'll make this money available by cutting foreign aid, bureaucracy, consultants, and other liberal waste to free up money for productive investments. We'll unleash the production of our resources for our benefit. Only a Canada First Conservative government will rapidly approve projects like these. We will repeal Liberal Law C-69 and instead grant rapid permission to our companies to build more pipelines, more natural gas exports, more data centers, more mines, and more projects of all kind across this country. We will stand up for this economy and our people. We will also repeal the entire carbon tax law on consumers, on industry, for everyone, for good. That will protect paychecks and bring production home. We'll also make sure that, speaking of home, that home will be safe again. We'll carry out the biggest crackdown on crime, illegal border trafficking, and drugs, so that you're safe again. I know that people in Sudbury no longer feel safe. When I crack down on crime by locking up criminals with jail and not bail, we will re-secure our communities so our children can play safely in the streets. Most importantly, we will become a strong, self-reliant, sovereign nation to stand up to the Americans and stand up for ourselves. We will reward work, unleash entrepreneurs, harvest our resources, make our own goods, trade with each other, build homes for our youth, rebuild our borders and military, honor our history, and raise our flag. And most of all, we will restore Canada's promise. A country where anyone from anywhere can do anything, where hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home, on a safe street, protected by brave troops under our proud flag. Canada first. Let's bring it home. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We will now take questions on the floor. On va maintenant passer aux questions.
Hi, Pierre. I'm Lindsay Alick from CTV News here in Sudbury.
Hi, Lindsay.
Would you support processing of these critical minerals right here in Sudbury?
Absolutely. We should process the minerals right here in Sudbury and in countless other communities across Canada, but most importantly, Sudbury. Sudbury is the hub. It's the hub for the supplies that go into our mines, but it's also the hub where the minerals should go to be refined, upgraded, and then shipped to market all around the world. This is a place where we have the expertise, the workers, the financing, the population, the geography, and I can't wait. I think that it is going to bring billions of dollars through Sudbury. So my message to high school students, get started on a pre-apprenticeship, start learning a trade, because when you get out of high school, you're going to be right into a full-on apprenticeship, and then you're going to be into a $200,000 a year job working on mining and mining-related positions. It's going to be an incredibly bright future for our incredible workers right here in Sudbury. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Prochaine question.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Oui.
Je m'appelle Orphée Moussanga, je travaille pour Radio-Canada. Vous avez parlé des...
Okay, so let's just zip ahead, see if we can get back to English. Here we go.
Week
After
after 10 years in power, the Liberals have given us the weakest economy in the G7. They've doubled our housing costs, driven $500 billion to the south, all while Mark Carney was economic advisor to Trudeau, and while Mr. Carney moved his corporate headquarters to New York. Do you know that he moved his headquarters to Trump's hometown 6 days after Trump first threatened to tariff Canada? While these people here were worried about losing their jobs, Mark Carney was busy moving jobs to Trump's hometown. That's exactly the kind of weak, compromised, conflicted leadership that Donald Trump wants, and it's why he endorsed Mark Carney yesterday. What Canadians need, though, is a leader who's tough and firm and stands by his convictions. A leader who will make Canada strong, self-reliant, and stand on its own 2 feet. A leader who will put Canada first.
Thank you. Next question. Prochaine question.
Harold Carmichael, Sudbury Star, Post Media. Mr. Poilievre, you've admitted your political style is a little too blunt, too direct. Are you going to soften or amend that style leading up to the weeks and months of the next election?
I think we need a strong leader who will make our country strong. You know, Canadians are nervous right now. They've been suffering after the lost Liberal decade raised their cost of living, made it impossible for them to buy homes, unleashed crime in our communities. And I've been very blunt in speaking out about that. But I'll also be very blunt about speaking of solutions. My solutions are very clear. We are going to lower the tax burden so that these hard workers back here keep more of their paycheck. We're going to get rid of the whole carbon tax so that businesses like this not only survive, but grow. We're going to repeal the anti-resource laws, and we're going to unleash the production of our resources. We're going to lock up the criminals, secure our border, and rebuild our military. That's how we're going to make our country strong and sovereign and put Canada first.
Thank you. We will now go to the final question. On passe à la dernière question.
Bonjour, Inès Rebey pour ONFR TFO. Je voudrais savoir en français, si vous êtes élu comme chef du gouvernement, est-ce que vous nommeriez un ministre désigné des langues officielles, contrairement à ce que M. Carney a fait avec son nouveau gouvernement?
Oui. Je vais nommer un ministre
Let me
responsable.
just pull out of this and we'll get back to the English again.
Dont il est le plus
Pick it up about
fier,
here.
c'est que maintenant je peux m'exprimer assez bien en français. Nos enfants, Anna et moi, on parle à nos enfants en français. On veut protéger le français dans notre famille et à travers le Canada. Et ça commence en ayant un
Sorry about the
ministre
French.
qui est responsable des langues officielles.
Thank you. That concludes today's press conference.
Thank you very much,
Ça
everyone.
conclut la conférence de presse.
And there you have it. So Pierre Poilievre, Donald Trump's new nemesis? I don't know. He doesn't like him. Doesn't like Pierre Poilievre. Everybody, I keep seeing these streamers saying, all you have to do is that, don't you know that Donald Trump just wants a conservative government and then all these problems go away and no more tariffs, just elect a conservative government. No, no, because even the conservatives in Canada are too left-wing for Donald Trump. Because in his view, I think a conservative government would be like a democratic government on the U.S. side, and a liberal government in Canada, I think in his mind, is like having communists, which is not true, but, you know, more socialism, that's for sure, under the Liberals. And I'm a fiscal conservative, so of course I like a lot of what Poilievre has to say on the economic front. The Conservatives, in my view, have always, historically in Canada, just done a better job of managing the economy because of their approach. And actually, in my opinion, overall, their policies tend to benefit even working class, middle class people more than what the Liberals have ever done. But that being said, you know, what Poilievre and the Conservatives are doing with Mark Carney, I think that in itself also deserves some scrutiny with these calls for more transparency. I'll get to that in a moment. And I just put a link to my Substack article for today in the Rumble chat. So please consider clicking on that and subscribing, because that article deals directly with Pierre Poilievre's attacks on Carney, the conservative attacks on Carney, saying that he needs to disclose his financial interests in full earlier than the ethics commissioner and the rules require. But before we get into any of that, let me just circle back to the Trump trade thing and Doug Ford. Pierre Poilievre has a bit of a problem in Ontario coming into this next election because Doug Ford, the Conservative premier in Ontario, which is a vote-rich province, he's not really in alignment with Poilievre and the Conservatives federally. He's kind of driving down the middle of the road. And he's been criticized pretty heavily by some conservatives, I mean just conservative voters, the electorate, as being too liberal. But he's just been elected to office again. He has a very strong, clear mandate from the public heading into this rocky time because of Trump's trade war with Canada and into this next election. And so if Poilievre could secure an endorsement or support from Doug Ford and the conservative machine in Ontario, it would benefit him a lot. But there's some bad blood, apparently, between the conservatives in Ontario and the federal Conservative Party and the Poilievre camp. And that's going to come back, and that's going to be a bit of a challenge heading into the next election, whenever that is going to be called. And I think probably within sometime this month. So it's just something to take note of. And it was on full display. It has been on full display over the past 24 hours when Doug Ford was asked in a media scrum, who would you rather deal with, Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre? And he says, I don't know either one of them, which was kind of an odd thing to hear, because I think he does know them, but what he's really getting at is he doesn't know either one of them very well. But listen to the response.
Trevor, do you think you have a better relationship with Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre?
I don't know either one of them, to be very frank.
Trevor, do you think you have a better relationship with Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre?
I don't know either one of them, to be very frank.
That was a very short example of the clip, but in the longer clip, he says that he will work with anybody. Maybe I can find the longer version of that. Yeah, I've got the longer version. This is here we go. Let me share this version with you so you get a better idea and fuller context, okay? That was a bit of a hit job somebody made when they cut that down, but here we go.
Trevor, do you think you have a better relationship with Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre?
I don't know either one of them, to be very frank.
Who would you like to get to know better?
Either one. I'll work with anyone. I don't know either one.
Yeah, what he's getting at, he doesn't really have a personal relationship with either one of those guys that much. I think he probably knows Poilievre a little bit better than he knows Mark Carney because they're both in conservative circles. But keep in mind, right, that this is why Doug Ford has been successful in Ontario in securing a re-election again. It's because he's very pragmatic. He's not married to his political ideology. He bends and weaves and flexes. And he's kind of all over the road when it comes to political ideology because as a premier, he understands that he has to work with mayors and municipal governments on one side, and a lot of them can be very progressive in Ontario. On the other side, he's dealing with sometimes a liberal government, sometimes a conservative government, and he needs to make sure that he has grants and money flowing in from federal government programs into the province, so he has to be on good terms with whomever is in office. And so his approach has been very effective. It's keeping the province humming along, and maybe it doesn't satisfy a lot of people who are, very entrenched in their political views and their political ideology as they go to the polls, but it's working for him because he's zigging and zagging and weaving, and he gets support from mayors during elections and municipal leaders, and then on the other side, he's like, yeah, I'll work with the Liberals, in order to get the job done. And because he gets things done and the money flows, then he gets support even from within his province. But keep in mind, too, that the Conservative Party in Canada, in my opinion, from my observations, is still very much like the Progressive Conservative Party, in that there's a pretty strong progressive wing to the party, kind of liberal. At the federal level, with Poilievre at the helm, since he's taken over, it's pushed further to the right. Closer, I think, more to what like the Conservatives were under Harper, less progressive. There's still a progressive wing, still a lot of liberals disguised as conservatives within the federal party, exerting a lot of influence. But Poilievre is not O'Toole. He's not Andrew Scheer. He's from the old Harper days. And so he is more conservative. And Doug Ford knows that. But this is going to be a bit of a problem, securing support heading into the next election. So keep an eye on that. Just something to be aware of heading into all of that. What was the other thing I wanted to share with you? Oh, yeah. Also, with regard to Poilievre, I did write a Substack today about this whole call for Mark Carney to disclose his financial resources, which is fine. Except what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And what I mean by that is Pierre Poilievre, and I'm just going to look at my article here on Substack. In fact, I'll bring it up. And it would be really great if you guys would consider subscribing to my Substack. I'm starting to write in there a little bit more. And I've been posting on a semi-regular basis, a few articles a week. It's free, just like everything else. At this point, it's free anyway. So if you want to dig into things just a little bit deeper and you want to take a few minutes to just get off the videos and read, and I'll probably start posting videos in here as well, so you'll get additional video content inside the Substack that you won't get over here. Here's the article. And I'm saying, show us the money. Full disclosure from Canada's leaders can't wait. I mean, all the leaders. So I'll just read some of this, and then you can go to the article and read the whole thing if you wish, because I did put that link in the Rumble chat. There's something weird going on. I put it in the one YouTube channel as well, over on the Maverick Live channel. So Pierre Poilievre has thrown down the gauntlet. The Conservative leader has demanded that Mark Carney, now crowned head of the Liberal Party, reveal every shred of his financial holdings beyond what the law requires of a leadership candidate. And it was a bold swing, a call for transparency in a system that thrives on haze. But Poilievre's not wrong to push. Canadians deserve more than the scraps the rules offer. Carney's got his eye on a snap election, possibly days away, maybe this month. And with Donald Trump's tariff threats and annexation taunts shaking Canada's foundations, we need every leader, Carney, Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, Yves-François Blanchet, to spill it all. Not just the legal minimum, but everything. Our country's survival is on the line, and half disclosures just won't cut it. Carney's the man of the hour, sworn in as Liberal leader back on March 9th, with a landslide of 85.9% of the vote within his own party, in order to take the leadership and subsequently to become the prime minister until he's fully elected, but he's unelected to parliament right now, a technocrat with no seat, but poised to become prime minister once, he has, this is actually something that I wrote the other day, and it was posted overnight, but Trudeau's gone, and you can expect that he's going to have to disclose all of this over like 120 days, as indicated here. And as an MP, he'd also fall under the Conflict of Interest Code for members of the House of Commons, requiring similar disclosures. But Carney's not an MP yet, and so he's not bound by those rules until he wins a seat. And so that's what Poilievre is going on about. And so what I'm getting at here is this is all fine and dandy, okay, for him to be calling for accountability. But members of Parliament, all of them, they are still entitled under the current rules to a high degree of privacy, even as they disclose their financial holdings to the Ethics Commissioner. A lot of this stuff still remains hidden from the public. And so there is still some degree of conflict of interest there, you see, potentially. So even with Poilievre, and this is laid out in the article, Poilievre, his holdings include real estate in Calgary, but also financial holdings directly tied to the United States. And so if the United States does well, his assets go up. If the United States doesn't do as well, his assets go down on the U.S. side. Now, he does have some Canadian investments as well, but he would benefit immensely, or maybe more, potentially, if Canada were to become the 51st state, because his holdings on both sides might actually increase in value, at least in the short term. In the long run, his U.S. investments might suffer if it doesn't become the 51st state. I'm just saying it's hard to know unless you get full disclosure. And not all of his assets are fully disclosed to the public because the rules don't fully require that either. So I say, especially right now, we need a greater degree of transparency from all of the leaders, Poilievre included. And I say, in fact, if that's what you're advocating for Mr. Carney, I say, you first, Mr. Poilievre, lead by example. Why the heck not? Put more of your information out into the public. Let us all see exactly where you stand with your investments. How much U.S. influence is there within your portfolio? How much of it is in a blind trust? How much do you actually have control over? I just want to know more details on all of them, because I want to know if anybody's taking any foreign money. I want to know if their investments are potentially influencing how they're voting on these issues. I want to know. That's what I want to know. I want to know what I want to know. I want to know more. Go to the Substack article. You'll read more about it. And again, this was something I worked on over the past week, and I posted this thing overnight. So take a look. It's a little bit dated, but still current and valid. The point is valid. So take a look at that, and I'll be right back on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm just back here, and I just happened to pop into the YouTube channel over here. I'm just going to take a look in the chat for a moment. Just scroll back because I haven't been able to look in there at all. Let me see here. Lots of Canadians have stocks in U.S. companies. That's true, says Bon. Good for Pierre. Good for Pierre, says Deborah. Did he reveal his assets? He has followed the rules as well, but the way the rules are written, you don't have to, not everything is made public. And for just regular MPs, they have more protections for privacy. As you get into cabinet and when you're prime minister, you have to reveal more of it, but there's still a lot of details on his investments that the public is not privy to. I've said for a long time that I think that anybody in a high position of public office like that really needs to have really almost complete transparent disclosure on everything so that we know. Used to be, not anymore as much. As Rick tells us, it's free speech channel. It's OT. I don't know what that means. I don't know. And Rick, can I get your email, please, says Nurse D? Yeah, sure you can. I will give you my email. Here, you can email me at rw581@aol.com. There you go. Anybody wants to email me, you can get me that. That's the easiest way. I'll put the other one in there too, the media, Maverick Multimedia email at mail.com, not Gmail, at mail.com. That one is used all the time as well. So there's the email. But that's the best one, rw581@aol.com. Goes right to me, and I see it usually fairly quickly. Sometimes the ones in the other email system get a little bit lost, and I get a lot of emails, so I'll try to go through the spam as well for anybody trying to contact me. Deborah says Carney's a sneaky, and I won't say the word. Yeah. Interesting stuff going on in there tonight. Okay, and that gets us to the top of the hour, and this gets me to the special thing that I was going to share with everybody tonight. You know, I've been thinking a lot, and this is another thing I've been working on for a while. And at times I've said that everybody in our family here, in our community, we're all sort of like misfits. A lot of us maybe feel like we don't fit in. A lot of us feel like, I don't know, we've struggled, especially since the pandemic, to find a place, you know? I guess in some ways I've always kind of felt like that myself, all the time, even when I was a kid. And that's okay, because we're all individuals. And, you know, when I was a teenager, when I was in school, high school, I had in my binder. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was influenced because I'd heard things or been exposed to different kinds of media that never really thought much about. But for whatever reason, this just burned into my brain. I wrote the word individuality in like pen, and it just covered one of my binders that I used to carry around to my different classes. That's what I wrote on my binder. Other kids were drawing pictures of things and whatever, peace signs or whatever they would doodle on their binders. I drew in like big block letters, individuality. It was always important to me, even back then when I was, 14, 15 years old. I was thinking about those things, these concepts. And that's what our entire society is really based on, Well, so why do I bring this up? It's off. Do I have my mic back? Now I have my mic back. I hope my microphone wasn't off too long. Okay. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah, all right. So I think we've got the audio. All right. So individuality, that's where I'm going with this. And I've been thinking, over the last few years with all the political division out there, people talk about snowflakes. And there's been a lot of attacking of snowflakes. From the conservative side, people looking at people who are kind of woke or left-wing, attacking snowflakes. But there's more to snowflakes than that. Some snowflakes, it seems to me sometimes they're maybe fragile. Maybe instead of attacking people all the time, maybe we need to recognize that everybody is an individual. And maybe sometimes we should be looking to protect people who are weaker. Maybe not sometimes, maybe all the time. Because that's really a conservative value when it comes right down to it. Protecting those who are weaker. even if you don't agree with them, and protecting the rights of people who are weaker than you, too. The disadvantaged, people who are arrested without due process. Preserve their rights, and you're preserving your own. And instead of attacking people that you disagree with, maybe we should be looking out for people a little bit more and showing a little bit of kindness. And as an extension of that, something was very troubling to me kind of overnight. And what that thing was is a couple of my real good friends, and they're in my chat. And I just thought, not really terribly troubling, but I know that sometimes we've had disagreements, the three of us, about different things, but we're always still friends. John out in Alberta, Brian Howell up in Kingston, me all the way down here in Chatham, and we're all very different people. And I got to thinking about John, and I got to thinking about Brian, and you couldn't find two people who are probably more different, more unique than my two friends, John and Brian. And they've been friends for decades, since they were kids. Sometimes, like friends do, they have disagreements. And I sense that there might even be a little tension there today. And I think even John didn't call me today. So I think, John, if you're out there, I love you. I missed your phone call today, because John usually phones me every single day, and we have great conversations, and I miss it when he doesn't call me. I missed your call today, John. I should have phoned you myself. Shouldn't have let my busy schedule get in the way, because today, I don't know, I was thinking about you. But I got busy doing something, finally putting the finishing touches on a new song. And this is mostly tonight, well, this is a tribute to John and Brian and their friendship, two people who could not be more different, and yet still friends. And I know that there's a little bit of concern between the two of you guys tonight, but I know you're going to work it out. And we've had friction from time to time too, and we've always worked it out, and that's okay. This song is dedicated to them tonight and their long-standing friendship. Because even though they're very different, I'm telling you right now, especially John, this is a message directly to you. You know what, man? You guys, you need each other. And as much as you might disagree on some things, or maybe not even disagree, but maybe you don't understand each other. You need each other. And if you stick together, you're stronger. Because we're all misfits around here. All of us. We're all very unique. This song is for everybody in the Maverick family here tonight. And it's a reminder that we do need to embrace every moment, stick up for those, defend those who are weaker than we are, defend the rights of everyone, defend the rights of every individual, because the rights of one depend on the rights of all, and the rights of all depend on the rights of one. If you let the rights of one individual, even especially someone who is weaker than you, be violated, then you really have no rights yourself. Because the same thing can happen to you. It's all about tolerance. You don't have to agree with people. Everybody is different. Everybody is different. And these are conservative values. These are conservative values that laid out the foundation for our liberal democracies in Western society. It's a cornerstone of everything. Snowflakes. Fragile, here for a moment, and gone. In the end, we're all just snowflakes. As I laid in bed last night, thinking, as I do when it's quiet, it just occurred to me that You know, people refer to snowflakes in a pejorative way, a negative way, and it just seemed to me, you know, depends on how you look at it. We need to cherish the snowflakes, because in the end, that's what we all are. And so tonight, I close this program off with this new song dedicated to John and Brian, and really to the whole Maverick family. I hope you like it. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side. Love y'all.
Drifting down without a sound, a gentle touch upon the ground. No two the same, yet side by side, like you and me in this great tide. Like a fingerprint from God, frozen tears from up above. Each one special, each one rare, a fleeting wonder light as air. Here for a moment, then melting away. Gone in the sunlight, lost in the day. Taken for granted, so easy to miss. Like life itself, so fragile is this. A million fall, yet each stands true. A perfect shape, a different hue. Just like us, no two alike. A spark of life, a soul in flight. Like a fingerprint from God, frozen tears from up above. Each one special, each one rare, a fleeting wonder light is air. Here for a moment, then melting away. Gone in the sunlight, lost in the day. Taken for granted, so easy to miss. Like life itself, so fragile is this. A million falling, yet each stands true. A perfect shape, a different hue. Just like us, no two alike. Like life itself, so fragile is this. Like you, like me, we shine, we fade. Yet every soul is beautifully made. A moment to love, a moment to stay. Before we drift, before we stray. Cherish the snowflakes, here only for a moment, then melt away.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.